Last but certainly not least, we have Eva-Lis Green from her Swedish island. Eva-Lis is from the National Library in Sweden, but also for as long as I know the Fiat IFTA and the MMC, she's been on the forefront of capturing the changing roles of the archivists and trying to see where they should be in the future to stay relevant. So I'm very curious to what Eva-Lis has to say about the past, the present, and the future. So good luck.
Yes, hello. I hope that you hear me correctly from the little tiny remote island. And I would like to reflect a little from a bit where we come from, where we are now, and also this excellent webinars and the discussions about roles and archivists that we had. I will speak a little about earlier seminars, a little about AI, artificial intelligence, and what some findings and from this series, and how will we describe the archivist role today? And maybe we could have a little discussion on the chat or in the Q&A afterwards. So just a journey of more than 20 years. We started in London, 98, with this changing sceneries, changing roles. Amsterdam, Vienna, Stockholm, Toronto, Hilversum, Glasgow, Lugano, and Stockholm again. And now we have these webinars. And I mean, the focus has been the changing sceneries and the changing roles all over these years. And it's been really interesting to follow. And I just found this new roles in 2007 in Vienna. We were talking about media managers. That was extremely new. Ambassadors, catalogers, content specialists. And remember that about content specialists, because I will come back to that in the end of the presentation, really. The ingest operators, the data and system managers. And I just had to put in what Lev Manovich talked about in Stockholm 2009 with GIGO, garbage in, garbage out, and the important role of the archivist. So what have changed over this time? I mean, in the 80s, it was common with standalone databases. In the 19th, we started to send information between the databases. 2000, system integration started. And in 2010, it was automation as a buzzword. So what does this mean to the archivist role? We were discussing the need of the generalist and the specialist. Maybe the two in the same person, or maybe not. And as a generalist, you need to have an understanding of the new media landscape. You need the knowledge of the company or the institution, mission and processes, understand the user's needs, be familiar with the file-based content and technology. And then I think this is 2014 when we discussed the metadata specialist to be an evaluator and quality controller of metadata input. Remember, now automation has started. Information and metadata architect. We talked about educator and provider of rules and guidelines. Think about the first presentation we had today when they talked about all these people that is writing metadata into the scripts, and how are the rules, how are the guidelines to do that. Mediator between users and IT technology, and that was also one presentation during this webinar that was talking about that. So there is more skills needed, of course, like content creator, archive logistics, file specialists and media managers, preservation and migration strategies. All these roles have been mentioned before, so I just wanted to remind you what we had talked about. But now I move into this major question for me, that how should human and artificial intelligence be combined in an age of increasing data and more intelligent machines? We have the archive specialist, the enlightened individual, ability to think critically, control of language both in interpretation and communication. And, okay, however, artificial intelligence, it can be potentially dangerous, passive, cannot really understand. So already 1843, Ada Lovelace said this: the analytic engine has no pretensions whatsoever to originate anything. It can do whatever we know how to order it to do, to perform. It can follow analysis, but it has no power of anticipating any analytic relations or truth. This was said 1843. Is that still valid? Maybe so. So, talking about the strength and weaknesses of machines. Machines can scale. It's fast and consistent. Unexpected patterns can occur, but it lacks the real world knowledge, and that is on the minus side as well. Lacks real world knowledge, cannot formulate questions, cannot interpret results. So if we look into the human intelligence and what it can complement with. So if you have the machine, it's fast and consistent analysis of large amount of data, new patterns and empirically based results. But a human then, knowledge of the material, new research questions, contents, context, and interpretation. So I like this slide because it starts a lot of thoughts, I think. So just a little about the pandemic as well, that have actually changed us in many ways, I think. The digital transformation has gone much, much faster. I mean, 3 years ago, I didn't even think that I should have fiber on this little island in the Baltic Sea and be sitting and talking to you in this webinar. But I have that today. And it developed, I mean, broadband has actually developed a lot, at least here in Sweden. We can see that there are fibers even on these remote islands. And we had a lot of people working at home and actually doing off-site, not on site, but being able to do research from your home and to send files to the users. We also, in the library, we have walls like 50 meters under the ground. And before, there was loads of material that was brought up in the daylight, and then the work was done by choosing and what you should have. But we have now more like using our cell phones, used to digitize, to send the files up. Is it this you want? Because we had less people on the site. Most people were at home. So I think that a lot of things have happened during the pandemic that actually has forced us to work in a more digital way, even as an archivist that has been analog. A lot of archivists has of course been very digital for a very long time. But there has also, I think, from an archive perspective, been more activity around collective licensing, that we license more material to get online, and more collections have been possible to reach. And that is, of course, from an archivist perspective, really interesting. So I know that there has been seminars on this pandemics, so I won't talk very much about that. I just wanted to remind us on this last years and what has happened, and that is actually we are moving forward very, very fast. And of course that affects the archivist role in many ways. I don't know how really, but we could discuss it. But I know that it changes our way to be archivists. And there was some interesting in the first webinar that I just wanted to mention, when Christophe von ORF was talking about harvesting and mining, and harvesting as the automation of information sent from one place to another, and mining actually the artificial intelligence part, like speech to text, etc. So for all of you that didn't listen to that, there is one of the interesting speeches that we had during this webinar that you can go back to in July. So what has been said then about the roles? This is what I've heard. There has been more said, but real data manager, metadata manager came back. And also humans need to select the training material. And then we are coming back to what I said in the beginning, that you should know the content. And I think that actually the knowledge of collection and the knowledge of the material is really crucial when we are coming into this artificial intelligence world and training machines and training AI and all this machine learning. Because if you don't know the collections, if you don't know the content, you can go really, really wrong. And I think we have talked so much about the changing roles, being mediators, being a lot, being very much in like metadata architecture and everything, that the actual deep knowledge of the collection has been a little bit forgotten. We have just taken it for granted that we have that as an archivist. But I just wanted to mention that, and we might come back to it when we have questions as well. Then it was said that AI are changing the game using technology without losing your head. And I thought that was a really nice one. And that archivists are the added value to AI. There was talks about AI stewardship, program knowledge came there as well, and so forth and so forth. So I won't talk very much more now, because I think it's very nice if we maybe in the chat or in the Q&A could have a little idea on this role of the archivist. And I hope that you understood what I was trying to explain from my perspective, and also what is still valid in our old definitions. So thank you.